You got field Negroes in America today. I'm a field Negro. The masses are the field Negroes. When they see this man's house on fire, you don't hear these little Negroes talking about our government is in trouble. They say the government is in trouble. Imagine a Negro, our government. I even heard one say our astronauts. They won't even let him near the plant. And our astronauts, our Navy, that's a Negro that's out of his mind. That's a Negro that's out of his mind. Just as the slave master in that day used Tom, the house Negro, to keep the field Negroes in check, the same old slave master today has Negroes who are nothing but modern Uncle Toms, 20th century Uncle Toms, to keep you and me in check, keep us under control, keep us passive and peaceful and nonviolent. That's Tom making you nonviolent. It's like when you go to the dentist and the man is going to take your tooth. You're going to fight him when he starts pulling. So they squirt some stuff in your jaw called Novocaine to make you think they're not doing anything to you. So you sit there and because you got all that Novocaine in your jaw, you suffer peacefully. Blood running all down your jaw. And you don't know what's happening because someone has taught you to suffer peacefully. The white man do the same thing to you in the street. When he want to put knots on your head and take advantage of you and don't have to be afraid of you fighting back, to keep you from fighting back, he get these old religious Uncle Toms to teach you and me. They're just like Novocaine, suffer peacefully. Don't stop suffering, just suffer peacefully. As Reverend Clee pointed out, let your blood flow in the streets. This is a shame. And you know he's a Christian preacher. If it's a shame to him, you know what it is to me. Because nothing in our book, the Quran, as you call it, Koran, teaches us to suffer peacefully. Our religion teaches us to be intelligent, be peaceful, be courteous, obey the law, respect everyone. But if someone puts his hand on you, send him to the cemetery. That's a good religion. In fact, that's that old-time religion. That's the one that Ma and Pa used to talk about. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and a head for a head, and a life for a life. That's a good religion. And then anybody, no one resents that kind of religion being taught but a wolf who intends to make you his meal. This is the way it is with the white man in America. He's a wolf, and you a sheep. Anytime a shepherd, a pastor, teach you and me not to run from the white man, and at the same time teach us don't fight the white man, he's a traitor to you and me. Don't lay down our life all by itself. No. Preserve your life. It's the best thing you got. And if you got to give it up, let it be even Stephen. The slave master took Tom and dressed him well and fed him well and even gave him a little education. Gave him a long coat and a top hat and made all the other slaves look up to him. Then he used Tom to control them. The same strategy that was used in those days is used today by the same white man. He take a Negro, so-called Negro, and make him prominent, build him up, publicize him, make him a celebrity, and then he becomes a spokesman for Negroes and a Negro leader.
Salaam Alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live!
Bismillah, wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah, wa ba'd, in the name of Allah, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon his last and final messenger. Family, friends, foes, haters, and hateettes, welcome back to the Feachaz. I greet you all in peace and love with no hatred in my heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we begin, please like, please subscribe, and please share. As you know, we got a lot of haters up in here. And tonight's live, I wanted to do this for a while. My wife, she sent me this article, not an article so much, but like a study from PEW Research. And the study itself had shown a drastic, and I mean like dramatic, drop in marriages overall in the West. But the most dramatic, of course, when it comes to these social ills, just happens to be, of course, the black community. And these numbers, when I saw them, I was very shocked. Right? Even for me, it was a little bit shocking because we knew that there were problems in the black community. Or we already knew that. We understood that. But the issue here, because of what has been accepted as black culture, there are severe consequences to what has been, accepted as black culture. And these consequences now, as you know, have caused major problems in the black community. And I want to show you what a Pew Research Center has essentially, done here, right? So we're going to have a look, right? So this is Pew Research Center here. And as you can see, the title of this is a recent article. As you can see, the date is June 28th, 2023. So it's very, very recent. These are recent numbers here, right? These are the most updated numbers. And it says a record high share of 40-year-olds in the U.S. have never been married. As of 2021, 25% of 40-year-olds in the United States have never been married. This was a significant increase from 20% in 2010. So in just in a time span of a decade, this problem has risen, 5%. According to new Pew Research Center analysis of the Census Bureau data, marriage has long been a central institution in the lives of Americans. In 1980, just 6%, okay? Just 6% in 1980. Okay, we're talking about our parents' time. Most of you, if you're my age, our parents' time. For 40-year-olds had never been married. But people born from the 1960s onwards have been increasingly delaying marriage. And a growing share are foregoing it altogether. The 2021 data marks a new milestone in the decades-long trend. Okay? So, you can see here on this graph here, right? 1/4 of U.S. 40-year-olds have never been married at a new record high. Okay? So, they're just doing the estimate numbers, right? They're saying in the 1900s, it was just over 15%, maybe 16% or whatnot. Yes, 16% here, right? And then you go to the 1940s, and it goes down steadily to, you could say, let's say that's 13% here, okay? It just keeps dropping, right? More and more people are getting married between the 1900s to the 1970s, right? But what happened here between this period here and this from 1980 to 2021, if you can see, the one thing that happened here was the promotion of black feminism in the black community. Now, feminism, if you look here from 1940, right, that's when modern feminism started. This is when modern feminism started. Between 1900 to 1940, what was going on, or sorry, 1900 to 1930, like I can say 1930s, okay? Between the 1900 to the 1930s, what was happening here during these years was the Great Depression. It was known as the Great Depression. Okay, so during these times, you know, it would kind of make sense that not many people be married over 40, because that's the Great Depression years, right? And then of course they're just getting out of World War One, and over here between 1930, you could say 37 to 1945. That's when World War II had started, okay? And during this period, this was the birth of what we know as modern feminism. Before that period, feminism was essentially a gripe that white women had with their white men, because white men were giving black men the right to vote. Okay, so it was never about women in the workforce before that. It only became about women in the workforce after World War II. Okay, and it was black feminism that taught women we don't need no men. So over here, it's almost like an exponential rise, which would make sense, because over here you see 1960. That's when black feminism starts taking off, and then these women start getting older, and then next thing you know, incrementally, they opt out of marriage, these folks. So because the gender roles have been so played with, where women have to be out in the workforce. It used to be that only the men were out in the workforce. Now men and women in the West have to be in the workforce just to make a living. Because of that, you know, I would say this is the major culprit in why people are not getting married. So it continues. While many unmarried 40-year-olds are living with their romantic partner, most are not. In 2022, 22% of never married adults ages between 40 to 44 were cohabiting, okay? Meaning they're just out here pretending to be married. They're pretending to be married without actually getting married. The share of 40-year-olds in 2021 who had never been married varied by the following demographic characteristics: gender, a higher share of men than women have never been married; race and ethnicity. Black 40-year-olds were much more likely to never been married than Hispanic, white, and Asian 40-year-olds. education level, 40-year-olds without a 4-year college degree were more likely to have never been married than those who had completed at least a bachelor's degree. 1/3 of those with a high school diploma or less had never married, compared with 26% of those with some college education and 18% of those with a bachelor or more education, which is a tremendous point. That education is directly linked to marriage. But we also know about race. But I want you to see these numbers here. Okay. Now, this right here, this is the share of never married 4-year-olds. And you can see here, this is a bar graph. Okay. And if you look here, it is showing, first it starts by men or women. So it's saying that 28% of men over 40 have never been married, as compared to 22% of women who have never been married. Right? So it's a sharp difference between the men and the women. But look by race. This is really shocking. Okay? You have white men, 20%, or white people, 20% of white people, rather, have never been married. But 46%, almost half of the black population over 40, have never been married. That right there is what shocked me. That number, any other community would see that as a catastrophe, and it is a catastrophe. The closest group to black folks is 27% of Hispanic people, and Hispanic people are basically on par with all men, right? In general. So if Hispanic people are on par with all men, that means essentially the reason why these numbers for men are 28% and women are 22%, the reason why it's this high is because of black people. You get it? Because black people are so unmarried. If you took the black populace out, this number goes down a few points. Maybe 2-3%. Same with this number. Right? So the black population is causing this to get pushed up. You get me? And of course, the Asian population, we know very well that they do tend to get married quite a bit. 17% is quite low, right? And that's comparable to the numbers in pre-World War II times for the Asian community. But the black community is absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. And it is the 40-year-olds that have not been married in the black community is triple the amount of Asians in terms of percentage. Okay? So that in of itself, just those numbers alone should tell you the dire straits that we are in as black folk because of these numbers. Okay? And then it goes for education, high school or less. By far, 1/3 of people with high school or less have never been married, right? And some college, 1/4, 26%. So 33% for high school or less, 26% for some college, and 18% for bachelor's or more. So if you go through secondary or post-secondary education, if you finish your degrees, your college degrees, or your university degrees, you are more likely to be married. You are twice as likely to be married than somebody with high school or less, right? In terms of these numbers, over 40, that is, over 40. Right? So that's really not surprising. But to me, the most surprising one here, the one that sticks out, even just by looking at this bar graph, the one that sticks out by far is the black community, and right next to it is high school or less. Okay. So we're going to continue with this. The overall decrease in the share of 40-year-olds who have married is especially notable because the share of 40-year-olds who had completed at least a bachelor degree was much higher in 2021 than in 1980. Okay, 39% versus 18%. More highly educated 40-year-olds are more likely to have married, but with the growth of this group has not reversed the overall trend of delaying or foregoing marriage. And my hypothesis for that is very, very simple. Our grandparents who weren't educated, right? If you're a Westerner, anyways, I'm not sure about any other country, but I'm a Westerner, right? So our grandparents, or even our parents who had less education, were getting more value for their money, even just out of high school, than a modern university degree carries. You could have gotten out of high school and gotten a trade and be able to support a family and purchase a house and have your wife at home in the 60s and 70s, and even for the most part in the 80s, right? But those times have changed, right? So if you look at modern times, the people who delay marriages, there is a cultural shift that is happening, because back in the past, people delayed marriage because of finances. That's how it was. They would forego marriage because of finance only. But now, because of the rise of feminism, what you're seeing is a trend that marriage is not seen as a very useful or what you would call it, an institution that has any value, right? It's not seen like that at all. Okay? Marriage is more seen as a burden in our time. It's more seen as a burden. And with women now, women are told to go out and have fun and wait until they're 30 till they get married. And if that's your strategy, by the time you reach your 30s, in general, men are not seeking, particularly over 35 for women over the age of 35 to get married. Especially that. All right, so anyways, to be sure, we can't assume that someone has not married by the age of 40, they never will. Okay, so they're just putting in some innuendo here. In fact, about 1 for 40-year-olds who have not been married in 2001 has done so by the age of 60, and that pattern holds a similar share of today's never married 40-year-olds will marry in coming decades. It seems that this part here is redundant and it's totally unnecessary, but it shows even perhaps the researchers themselves, they're looking at these numbers in shock and awe. And that's why they have to put that little paragraph at the end. Because marriages in all communities, of course, they have been decreasing, but the worst by far is not even close is the black community. Pretty much double every other community and triple the Asians, right? More than double the white community, just about double the Hispanic community. All right, so now there is an issue with, of course, the black community with regards to black feminism. Black feminism is a scourge. Black feminism is is a weapon against the community itself. It is a Trojan horse. And single women keep women single. And in the black community, single black women anyways, are the first ones to give advice about men. They are the front lines to give advice about men and marriage. And other black women listen to these women who have no man or who have multiple failed relationships. Just a litany of bodies behind them. And they listen to these women for their advice. In the black community, the one person you cannot oppose in the black community is Big Mama. She is the one person that you cannot go against, Big Mama. And Big Mama, in reality, is the last person that should be listened to. She should not be listened to at all, right? Particularly when it comes to relationships with men. Especially, when Big Mama and her children, she just carries on the legacy of single motherhood. That is her legacy. So her children ain't got no man. And her grandchildren ain't got no man. And she ain't got no man. And nobody can oppose her. And you are talking about generations of napalming the black family in the name of I don't need no man. And what is going to happen is that eventually you're going to see that these same women, who essentially used government handouts and signed off on government handouts in order to kick men out of their homes. The government is preparing to kick all of these black women out the homes. And they will be left without any men to protect them because of the way that they handle it. And this already happened in the black church already. Black men have totally abandoned the black church. And these same women who kicked out their fathers of their children and have weaponized the system against the fathers of their children, bankrupting their entire community because of child support. These women will be left with no protectors whatsoever. Because believe you me, right? It's not just in the States, even here in Canada. There is an article that came out today or yesterday, actually. Anybody can go check this article out. What the situation that's going on in Toronto, where refugees who are seeking refuge in Toronto, they just got off their plane or their boat, whatever. They reach Toronto and they are homeless in droves. Those are the refugees. Not to mention the homeless problem that has plagued Toronto and BC, the sharp rise in criminality, the sharp rise in mental illness, and the rents in Toronto, the inner cities, now New York style rents. Even Toronto right now, you can say is Gotham. You can say literally it's comparable to any major city in the States in terms of crime, problems, drug addiction, mental. It's comparable, and I would argue even worse than plenty of the worst. some of the top big cities in the U.S. that have these issues. Arguably worse. Now, because Toronto has that reputation for the last how many years, since 1970s, of accepting refugees and whatnot. Remember, in the 70s, Toronto was like just a blip on the map. It didn't have many people in the 70s, right? And it was the CN Tower that was built in the 70s. And then next thing you know, my immigration started coming to Toronto. Toronto ended up being this big city. In the, I want to say the 90s, that's when the housing boom started. By 2008, it peaked out. And then next thing you know, Toronto was a mega city, right? So now what you're seeing, because you're seeing in the States, is happening to black women all over the States, where black women are becoming homeless. They are the fastest growing homeless demographic in the U.S. You're going to see that same trend here in Canada. Mark my words. You're going to see it. Right? And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. When you see that refugees ain't got no place to stay, the next people on the list to get kicked out of their homes will be black women. And the way that black women look at marriage, or the modern black woman anyways, you always find them talking about, we want a man on our level. When they say that, what they really mean is that we want a man on our financial and educational level. That's what they say. And men are not looking for women with work skills like that. They're really not looking for that. That men don't value that in a woman, right? They're not looking for another man to marry. But women are looking at marriage like men look at marriage, right? Particularly black women. And they even speak like men when looking for a mate. So this problem will get exasperated and compounded because there are all these programs for black women, right? That's government programs, black women's this organization, black women's that organization. Right, and this is intentional, of course, to ensure that black men are not able to participate in the economy in any type of a competitive manner. So, I just wanted to do a short live about this marriage issue. Like, subscribe, share, hit me up on Patreon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.